It was 1980 in the early hours of Holy Saturday, the day before Easter, and one of the holiest days of the year for Catholics. 71-year-old Sister Margaret Ann Pahl was preparing the chapel at Mercy Hospital in Toledo, Ohio, for the upcoming Easter Mass. She had done this same act every year for over a decade since her retirement to the convent on the 5th floor of the hospital. So it was a surprise to her when a man snuck up behind her, wrapped an altar cloth around her neck, and cinched it tight. She was old, he was young, and the fight wasn't fair. He strangled her until the life was almost out of her. Almost. He needed her alive for the final act of his ritual. He laid her on the floor of the sacristy and covered her with an altar cloth. He placed a crucifix on her chest and stabbed her 9 times. The puncture holes leaving a visible outline of an inverted cross on her body. He then removed the altar cloth and stabbed her 22 more times. And as she bled out on the floor, he dipped his thumb into her blood and anointed her forehead as if it were holy oil. And then, as one final act of humiliation, he pulled the elderly nun's dress over her head, yanked down her underwear, exposing her before her Lord and to those that would soon find her. He then rammed the crucifix inside her, violating her in a way that no man had in all her years on this earth. And it was just 2 days before her 72nd birthday. In recent years, news media has begun to reevaluate and deconstruct the Satanic Panic, a bout of mass hysteria that afflicted the United States for over a decade. But what if it wasn't just hysteria? What if some of it was true? Ritual Rewind brings you into the darkest corners of the 1980s, uncovering the crimes, conspiracies, and occult fears that shaped a generation. Tonight, we delve into the slaying of Sister Margaret Ann Pahl. It's a tale of a priestly devil cabal, child sacrifice, and a Catholic Church cover-up. It's the case of the devil and the heretic. I'm your host, Drew, and you're listening to The Ritual Rewind.
Sister Margaret Ann Pahl was found murdered in the chapel of Toledo Mercy Hospital in Ohio on April 5, 1980. The 71-year-old had been strangled and stabbed more than 30 times in a scene made to look like a satanic ritual.
Sister Margaret Ann Pahl was born on April 6, 1909, and was the 4th of 9 children. Her family was devoutly Catholic, and even before she had finished school, she knew she wanted to be a nun. And when she graduated, she committed herself to the Lord and joined the Sisters of Mercy. She took a vow of poverty, chastity, and service to the poor, sick, and uneducated. Under the tutelage of the convent, Sister Margaret Ann trained and worked as a nurse and then as the administrator of 2 Sister of Mercy hospitals in Toledo, Ohio, before retiring to the convent on the 5th floor with the other nuns. But just because she was retired didn't mean she was finished serving the Lord. She dedicated herself to tending to and caring for the hospital's chapel. She was very strict, very firm, and things had to be done her way, and if they weren't, she would let you know. Most days, Sister Margaret Ann was at work before dawn, preparing the chapels for religious services, and the day of her murder was no different. Sister Margaret Ann woke up at 5 a.m., had a quick breakfast, and then headed to the chapel to set up the altar for the Holy Saturday service that was to take place that afternoon. Holy Saturday is considered one of the holiest days in all of churchdom. It falls between Good Friday, the day of Christ's crucifixion, and Easter, the day of Christ's resurrection, and it is a day of reflection. Just after 8 a.m. that morning, another nun, Sister Marie, headed towards the chapel, only to find it locked, which was strange because it was never locked, but also because she knew Sister Margaret Ann should be in there setting up for service. Sister Madeleine Marie found her key, unlocked the door, and entered. The chapel was dark, no lights were on, except for those coming in from the hallway outside, and Sister Marie was immediately hit with an ominous, oppressive feeling. And when she stepped inside, she saw Sister Margaret's body on the floor. Down the hall in the cafeteria, 2 police officers, Davison and Dieter, were wrapping up their night shift when they received the call. They quickly rushed to the scene, but when they got there, they discovered that it was already too late. The scene had been compromised. Doctors, nurses, and nuns had all trafficked through the area, and Sister Marie had pulled down Sister Margaret's dress to cover her. Officers Davison and Dieter secured the scene and began to question the witnesses. A hospital technician told investigators that when she arrived at work around 7 a.m., she saw the hospital's chaplain, Father Robinson, standing by the chapel doors. A doctor claimed he had received an emergency call As he was rushing towards the scene, he passed the priest who was going in the opposite direction. The doctor was quoted as saying, "He looked back at me over his left shoulder and gave me a stare that went right through me." When they realized Father Robinson had yet to arrive at the chapel, they called his hospital residence. He said he was just getting out of the shower and would be right down, but he never arrived. Father Gerald Robinson was a small, quiet man, often cold and distant to others around him. He was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1938 to Polish parents. And much like Sister Margaret Ann, Father Robinson's mother was a rigid, authoritarian person who pressured him to join the priesthood. At the time of Sister Margaret Ann's death, he was the chaplain of Mercy Hospital and had worked with Sister Margaret Ann for 6 years. Suspicion quickly fell on Father Robinson. Initially, the priest was cooperative with the investigation and even allowed police to search his residence on the hospital grounds. And it's where they found a long, sword-like dagger that they believed could have possibly been the murder weapon. It was tested at a crime lab, and it was discovered to be incredibly clean, freshly dusted, and polished, with not a single print on it. However, on the handle was a medallion, and when pried off, they found a small droplet of blood that, at the time in 1980, could not be tested for DNA. 2 weeks after the murder, the detectives brought the priest in for questioning. It took 8 hours, and towards the end, Father Robinson blurted out that someone came to him and confessed to the murder of Sister Margaret Ann. This shocked the detectives, because church law forbids a priest to reveal what was said in confession. In fact, a priest could be excommunicated from the Catholic Church if he did so. But the police continued to press Father Robinson for more information, and Father Robinson immediately reversed course and stated that he had made it up. He was tired and just wanted to go home. Before they ended the interrogation, the detectives asked 2 final questions. "Do you have any idea who could have killed the nun?" And Father Robinson said no. Then they asked him, "Do you know why anyone would have killed Sister Margaret Ann?" And Father Robinson's reply was telling. He said, "She had a dominant personality." Any more questioning was halted when the deputy police chief, Vetter, and the diocese attorneys arrived. That would be the last time that anyone in the police department would speak with Father Robinson in relation to the murder for over 20 years. And with that, the case went cold. The official statement from the Toledo Police Department was that there was insufficient evidence, but the investigators believed that the Catholic Church covered it up, and that the Toledo Police Department did what it could to protect the reputation of the Toledo Catholic Diocese. The investigators further pointed out that most of the top-ranking police officers were Catholic, as well as the top prosecutor and many of the judges. But all this would change 23 years later when another Catholic nun filed a lawsuit against the Toledo Diocese, claiming to have been tortured and raped as a child in rituals performed by Catholic priests Chet Warren and Father Gerald Robinson.
Authorities got a letter from a Toledo woman who claimed she'd been abused as a child by Catholic priests.
And in that letter, as a little side issue, Father Robinson was mentioned. We decided to reopen the case completely. We re-interviewed all the old witnesses from back in 1980.
In the fall of 2003, Sister Mary Curtis was a 40-year-old elementary school teacher at a Catholic school in Toledo. A year prior, in 2002, the Catholic sex abuse scandal was blown wide open with the Boston Globe's expose. Due in part to the endless news coverage, a flood of flashbacks to childhood memories began to overwhelm Sister Mary Curtis. Violent images of satanic ceremonies, being forced to eat eyeballs, nailed into coffins with cockroaches, and penetrated with snakes. Sister Mary Curtis said that the abuse began when she was in preschool. She said that Father Chet Warren would visit her home under the pretext of offering pastoral counseling to her depressed, overwhelmed mother. And after these sessions, Father Warren would send Curtis's mother to bed and look after Sister Mary Curtis. And it was then that he started to abuse her. By the time that Sister Mary Curtis had made these allegations known, Father Chet Warren had already been defrocked after being sued by numerous women who claimed to have been raped and abused by him when they were children. And as she got older, Sister Mary Curtis claims the abuse became more violent. Father Chet Warren would yank her pigtails and slap her in the face, and that eventually he forced her to join in satanic rituals. She stated that the rituals were horrifying and sadistic, designed to break our wills and internalize whatever core programmed message they wished to use to further our powerlessness. She claims to have been taken to a farmhouse by her father, and from the outside she heard the beating of drums. Her father dragged her into the basement where several men had gathered together wearing dark robes. One sat in a corner pounding a drum, while others performed a strange ritual dance. Sister Mary Curtis was shocked to see her dog smoked tied to a table. Her dad handed her a meat cleaver and ordered her to kill the dog, but she refused, so her father did it for her. She was then forced to drink the dog's blood, and then she was made to lie on the floor naked as the men stood around her and poked her with knives. Then, one by one, the priests raped her. When she was 5, Sister Mary Curtis was taken to a cemetery and stuffed inside a coffin that was filled with cockroaches. She was told the cockroaches were marking her for Satan. At another ceremony, she was given an eyeball to eat. She said that they stated to her
that it was a symbol, that the group would always be watching her.
Sister Mary Curtis then said that a 3-year-old was brought out and that she was given a machete and told to murder the child. But again, she refused. So one of the priests grabbed her arm and hacked away at the child. Once it was over, Sister Mary Curtis was locked in the room and forced to clean up the mess. And if that wasn't bad enough, Sister Mary Curtis recounts another horrific experience. She again arrived at the farmhouse and was taken to the barn, where she claims there were bodies of 6 young girls hanging on meat hooks. She was then told,
"This is what happens when you talk about the circle of darkness."
When Sister Mary Curtis reached high school age, she said her father would deliver her to Chet Warren's residence, where men would pay to have sex with her. Father Warren was running a prostitution ring out of his home, and one of his clients was Father Gerald Robinson. Father Gerald Robinson would have Sister Mary Curtis stripped naked. He would then put on a black leather jacket and a pair of spiked leather cuffs. He would then tie her to the bed spread eagle. He licked her and bit her, and according to her, the foreplay would eventually turn violent. He would pinch and slap her, calling her a whore and telling her,
"You were made for this."
She said this of Father Gerald Robinson: "He was brutal, and he wanted to humiliate me." And while Sister Mary Curtis's allegations may seem outrageous, they were bolstered by another woman who claimed to experience similar violent acts with Chet Warren and Gerald Robinson. Teresa Bombrice was a school teacher in Columbus, Ohio. She claims that Chet Warren took her to a farmhouse in Toledo and forced her to participate in satanic rituals. She stated, "I know it's hard for people to really understand this, but it was real. Members of the satanic group purposely created an atmosphere of fear among their victims and put them in situations that would seem so bizarre that most adults would refuse to believe their stories." In April 2005, a third Toledo woman came forward. She had journals from her childhood with colorings of men in robes and dark hats, frightened little girls, and priests with women's hair. She claims to have been kidnapped and held in the basement of St. Aldabert's Church. While there, Father Robinson and other clergy, including Jerry Mazzuchowski, performed ritualistic ceremonies dressed as nuns and referred to each other by female names. She claimed that Father Gerald Robinson was known as Mary Jerry and Mazzuchowski was called Carrie Jerry. The group chanted satanic verses and called themselves the Sons of Sam. They cut her with knives, drew upside-down crosses on her stomach, and forced her to drink the blood of sacrificed animals. They told her
that she was Satan's child.
When Father Mazzuchowski was later questioned about these accusations, he admitted that he created a group with friends that they had nicknamed the Sisters of Assumed Mary, or Sam, and they did dress up as nuns and refer to each other with female names. But he denied ever having taken part in child abuse or satanic rituals. All this new information was enough for investigators to reopen the case on the murder of Sister Margaret Ann. And as the old evidence was reevaluated, investigators compared the bloodstains on the altar cloth with the shape of the letter opener taken from Father Robinson's residence and discovered that it matched. It had the same shape, same size, and same configuration. Investigators further sought out the case files that the diocese had kept during the initial investigation into the nun's murder. And while the church said that they had complied and given all the files that they had to the police, investigators learned of the church canon that requires the diocese to maintain a secret archive, also called a subsecreto in the diocesan curia. These files are to be carefully guarded and are not to be offered up for viewing to anyone outside of the church. And these files included criminal investigations of priests and diocesan employees. Investigators argued that they had intentionally been misled by the church, and the court agreed, and they ordered these files to be turned over to the police. When they finally received the files, investigators found them to be nearly 2 inches thick, with over 150 separate documents. With the newly discovered files from the diocese, the new DNA evidence from the letter opener, and the eyewitness testimony from the initial investigation in 1980, police investigators arrested Father Gerald Robinson from his home next door to the police substation. In his home, they found a book on the occult, and in a chapter titled Black Mass, the portion on human sacrifice was underlined. It read, "Satanists must select an innocent who is placed on an altar during a black mass. The innocent can be sexually abused, tortured, or even killed in order to receive the power of the devil." According to the prosecutor, Dean Mandros, the slaying of Sister Margaret Ann Pahl was textbook satanic killing. There was a tremendous amount of evidence that would have allowed them to make that argument. The anti-Christian symbols were intended to desecrate the devout nun and to leave a message for whomever his audience was. But the prosecutor felt the satanic ritual was too much for 12 jurors to get behind, and so he went with a more mundane reason. A man got very angry at a woman, and the woman died. The only thing different is that the man wore a white collar and the woman wore a habit. He continued, "Father Gerald Robinson killed Sister Margaret Ann in a fit of rage and tried to anoint her with her own blood in a bastardized version of the last rites. In the end, it only took jurors 6 hours of deliberation before they returned a guilty verdict, and at age 68, Father Gerald Robinson was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and he died there on July 4th, 2014, and he was given, to much protest, a funeral with full priestly rites by the Catholic Church. In researching this episode, we relied on the articles from the Toledo Blade, the Claremont Sun, and the Bishop Accountability Project, as well as the TV series The Lake Erie Murders and the book Sin, Shame, and Secrets by Dave Yonke. Links can be found in the show notes. And thank you for joining us tonight on the Ritual Rewind. I'm looking to grow this podcast, so if you like it, please rate it and review it. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, give it a like and a comment. And as always, you can interact with us at the Ritual Rewind on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And as this is a podcast when cassette culture met cult culture, please stay tuned for this week's movie pairing after this short break. This week's movie recommendation is the 1987 film The Rosary Murders. It stars Donald Sutherland with a screenplay by Elmore Leonard. While this film has little to do with a satanic panic, it does have a lot to do with priests and nuns getting murdered. Donald Sutherland plays Father Robert Kostler, and he's drawn into the murder investigations of a nun and priest when the killer joins him in the confessional and admits to murdering the two, blaming the church for his daughter's death and promising more murders to come. Sutherland is forced to deal with the moral implications of the vow he took to the church and the lives that could be saved if he spoke up. The film can be slow and is more meditative than suspenseful, but Sutherland puts on a great performance as a priest in conflict with his faith. So I give this film 3.5 VHS tapes out of 5. Good night, and thank you for listening.